Hi, everyone. This is Angela Brown, Project Lead with the Youth CareerConnect program. We are going to get started with our webinar today, which is going to be more so a discussion than just a webinar about career pathways. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Hastings, who's going to be your moderator for today.
Hi, thanks, Angela. Hi, everyone. This is Sarah Hastings. I am from the Division of Youth Services at the Department of Labor in our Employment and Training Administration. You all know and work with a lot of my teammates. I am in the Division of Youth Services. I don't work directly on YCC, but I work on things like career pathways, which is why you're going to be hearing from me today. Some of you I may have met a couple years ago when you guys came to Washington, D.C. The first cohort or the first group of YCC grantees came. I did share a bit about career pathways. We have a little bit of updates on this work, but we're excited to have this conversation, this continued conversation around career pathways with you all. We will try to do our best to make connections to the work you guys do. Career pathways as a broad theme is happening all across the country, from high schools to post-secondary educational institutions, training centers, with your workforce boards, at the state and local level. So folks across the country are working on this notion of building career pathway systems and programs. So you've been hearing about career pathways. We're excited to talk more about it. This is your chance to ask questions. We're going to be providing some resources for y'all that will hopefully help you continue to do your work. But we'll get through the presentation today, but we want this to be a conversation. So at any point, jump in. You can use the chat feature, send us questions. You can send it to the group, let us know. You can use the Q&A section as well. So feel free to use the WebEx platform. Put in your questions throughout as you're thinking of them, and we're hoping to be able to get to those as we go through our presentation. Next slide, please. Today we are going to be hearing, you're going to hear from me for a little bit on a few slides, providing some overview, and then you're going to hear from Debbie Mills. And I'm guessing that most of you folks have connected with Debbie. She is a YCC technical assistance coach. She is also helping to set up and manage the National Career Pathways Network. She does and lives and breathes career pathways, so she has expertise in this area, in the area of curriculum development, staff development, linkages between secondary and post-secondary institutions, community engagement and partnerships with business, industry, and labor. So we've got the right person on our presentation today to really talk you through the Career Pathways Toolkit, and I'll explain that in a minute, but also to really think about the work that you're doing, how it relates to kind of all the other pieces and parts to building career pathway systems. So Debbie will be speaking in just a moment. So today what we're going to do, our objectives for the hour-long session here is to really understand, we'll start off by understanding which federal agencies are involved in career pathways at the federal level. I'm going to talk through that briefly, but we want to give you some kind of a sense of the landscape at the federal level. We're going to learn how to crosswalk YCC goals with the career pathways definitions and components, how they really are aligned, and you'll see that very clearly soon. We're going to understand what partners are necessary at the local level for the career pathway system and how YCC fits into the system. And we are going to be able to demonstrate and share some tools and other resources that are available through the DOL Career Pathways Toolkit that we're very excited to kind of dig into today. But we have some polling questions that we wanted to ask you. First, to just get a sense of who all participated in the WIOA webinar on November 30th, the Career Pathways webinar, the WIOA way of doing business. So you can see here you have a polling question on your right. take a look at that. Did you watch that webinar? Were you able to participate or watch that after it was posted a couple days after? Or no, were you not able to watch the webinar yet? Just getting a sense of who was able to listen into that will help us understand kind of what level of information you have. So please go ahead and feel free to answer that polling question and let us know what you were able to do if you were able to participate on the November 30th webinar on Career Pathways. And Angela, when you close that, I'll be able to get a better sense of that. We're just closing the poll now. And Angela, I'm not seeing it on my end, so if you are able to see, oh, it just showed up. So yes, that's great. So 27% were able to watch and 73% were not. So that is fine, that the folks that were not able to watch, we're gonna kind of go through some of the material that was shared on that webinar. We recommend that you go back if you can and listen to that, because it gives you some higher level information about career pathways, especially for how it relates to a lot of the work that's happening at the Department of Labor, at the Department of Education, Health and Human Services, how TANF can be connected to career pathways. So I know that recording was sent out to you all, so if you can watch that, that might be helpful. But today's conversation, we are going to dig into some of that, so that's helpful. We also were going to do another polling question to get a sense of your knowledge of career pathways. So you can see here another question: what is your level of knowledge of career pathways? Are you an expert? Do you feel like you really know what this is and what kind of work is happening at your local level? The second B option is I have some knowledge but would like to know more. C is I have heard of it but don't really know a lot, which is fine. A lot of folks are in that category. And then also D, I'm new to this and want to learn. And folks, I would guess, are across this list, both from I'm an expert all the way to, you know, I've heard of career pathways, but I really want to learn a lot more. So feel free to select one of those options there. You know, career pathways, we have been doing this at the federal level for a number of years. Maybe some of you were involved in some of the state level work that happened in 2011. The Departments of Labor and Education and HHS came together to provide some technical assistance to 9 states and 2 tribes. And we brought folks here to DC to really begin to do the work. What does it take to build career pathway systems? And from there, we have been developing a number of resources from that institute back in 2011. We've developed some career pathways joint letters, and we've been providing technical assistance. The most exciting piece of the Career Pathways work history really is when the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA, codified and defined career pathways work. And so we've been doing this for a number of years, and a lot of folks on the ground have done some of this work, have been engaged in it, and others are really new to it. So we can see that the majority of folks, you know, have some experience with this, not totally experts, but most folks are not completely new. Just it looks like 1 or so is real new to this. So we're going to be able to give you some information kind of across the knowledge levels here. So let's jump to the next slide, please. So as I was mentioning, the Career Pathways work has been happening across the federal government for a number of years. In 2011, or 2012, excuse me, the Departments of Labor, Health and Human Services, and Education came together, wrote a joint letter that really talked about how we felt that it was very important that agencies and programs from the federal level all the way down to the state and local levels are really aligning and leveraging their resources to do what we think is good workforce education, workforce development and education and training for folks across the skill spectrum. And that letter, that joint letter, I think had a big impact on states and local areas, and they could use that letter to say, see, this really is the sort of direction we should be going in terms of a framework for how we do education and training for folks who need skills and need employment. Since then, we were able to bring on board even more of our federal agencies in the federal family to develop a joint letter. So back in April 2016, we had 12 federal agencies develop and release this joint letter on career pathways. You can find this letter on the Career Pathways Community of Practice, or your YCC Community of Practice can link to that, this joint letter. And this really demonstrates how, at least at the federal level, we are looking at the framework for how we think about career pathways. So you can see here we have every agency from U.S. Department of Agriculture to Education to Housing and Urban Development, the Social Security Administration, we've got Commerce and Transportation. So we're all on there, and we're all really trying to work together to support career pathways and alignment across all of the federal agencies. And you'll hear more from Debbie today why partnerships are so important. There's so many federal funding streams and state and local funding streams that go down and touch programs, but they're often siloed. And really the whole point of career pathway system development is to think strategically about how those federal resources and state resources sort of hit your local area, and how you can be thoughtful in pulling those resources together to do the work that you know you need to do. So this letter was one sort of way in which the Department of Labor, along with its partners in the federal family, could demonstrate that the importance of career pathways work on the ground. So next slide, please. And here you can see, and I mentioned this before, the career pathways definition is now, it's codified in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. So it is defined as a combination of rigorous and high quality education, training, and other services that do a number of things and include a number of things. And you can see that on the left-hand side. This is essentially the definition that is in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA. And if you look on the right-hand side, these are the list of YCC elements or YCC goals. And if you can see where I have bolded these words, there is almost a direct overlap in the goals and the definitions of both career pathways and YCC, the YCC goals. So if you were wondering, why do I need to know about career pathways? What is this crazy thing that everybody keeps talking about? It's what you're doing. And so we just wanted to put this slide up so that you guys can see real clearly that what you guys are doing really is sort of the sort of best practice. These are the elements that we think are really critical to doing good workforce development, good youth workforce development, education and training. And it entails and encompasses all of these activities and services, and it requires that you are aligning with the skills needs of the industries, and you're working in partnership with employers, that it connects you to its successful secondary and post-secondary education options, counseling, and understanding what career goals are, and thinking through all of these pieces. You can't do one thing without the other, really, without these things together really help you be successful in serving folks. So we just wanted to highlight that you guys really are doing the career pathways work through your YCC grants. So next slide, please. And here, you know, you may have seen this. These are our 6 key elements of career pathways. I'm hoping that this is not new to folks, but if it is, here is what we have been saying are really the key elements to doing good career pathway system development. And this was included in our earlier work years ago around our first Career Pathways Toolkit. We have continued to build on that work through the years, and this is now in the toolkit that we're going to be talking more about today. You will see everything's based on these 6 key elements, and the resources and the definitions and the work that happens are really divided out by these 6 key elements. So they are building cross-agency partnerships, identifying industry sector and engaging employers, designing education and training programs, and that is our element 3, and that really is where most of the work that you all do. You're on the delivery side, and you're really providing the education and training programming for folks. So element 3 is the element where a lot of the work that you guys do lives. Element 4 is the identifying funding needs and sources, aligning policies and programs, measuring system change and performance. So these are the 6 major buckets, if you will, or elements of doing career pathway system development. So you really, again, you can't do one without the other. You can't necessarily have designing in education and training programs and have those be successful without really having built up your industry partners or your sector strategies. You really can't know if you're doing a good job of providing these services to young people if you're not measuring those outcomes and you're watching how your performance measures and how you're using that performance information to provide some ongoing and continuous program improvement. So, and you can see there, it's a little blurry on my end, maybe it's a little clearer on yours, but this bottom part of the slide here, it says system, program, and participant, and that is just to remind folks that really the work that you're doing, a lot of it requires system development and system alignment. You're not working just in siloed programs. It's not a small P program, if you will. It's really the big programs that you're pulling in resources and funding streams from a number of different areas and thinking sort of more broadly about how you do the work. That is the system level work as it relates to career pathway system development. And then programs really is the service delivery strategies that you use. You can then see it leads to participants, because really in the end, it's all about how we can move, in our case, young folks along a career pathway. Next slide. So this is what we're going to dig into today, and I'm going to turn it over to Debbie in just a minute. But this is our latest version. You may have been hearing us talk about Career Pathways Toolkits for a number of years. We had an earlier version. We recently updated the toolkit with references to the WIOA law and to the requirements that are included in the new law that relate to career pathways and have a lot of requirements related to the Career Pathways Toolkit. All of that is included, but we went a little step further really with the toolkit, and we developed a resource that not only kind of talks you through what does it mean to do good career pathway system development, but it provides a number of worksheets that you all can use with your teams at your local level and with your program partners to think through how well are we doing this. And Debbie is going to walk through a few of these and some examples of these in each of the 6 key elements. So she will be doing that in a minute. But in the Career Pathways Toolkit, you can find you can see on this left-hand side, this is a picture of the Career Pathways Community of Practice site. You can get there through your Youth CareerConnect site to the Career Pathways Toolkit. You see on the left-hand side the related content. Those are, we have an introduction. We've got all 6 key elements. They're all individual PDFs, and then you can see on the very bottom there's a Career Pathways resource So each of these are individual documents that you can go into to really dig into the work that you want to do. So, for example, if you want to think about how to better partner and utilize your employer partnerships, you would look at element 2 and you would dig into that module to think better about the work you're doing with your employers. This new toolkit has the WIOA references. As I explained, it's got a lot of examples of what's happening around the country, some good, best practice examples. And then it has these worksheets, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about more today. The cool thing about this new toolkit is that it's modular, it's fillable. So you can go in, you can click into and actually type into these documents and save them and then use them for your teams when you're having strategic conversations. And then it's also interactive as well. So that's the toolkit. I'm going to pass it over to Debbie so that she can dig into the specifics. So Debbie, you can take it away.
All right. I want to make sure I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, thanks. Wow, this is a wonderful toolkit. I was part of the development team, but I got to tell you, there were so many stakeholders that contributed to the development of it, that they provided insight and some guidance and personal experiences from state workforce administrators to adult basic ed, human services, post-secondary ed reps, and then we also brought in a second group of collaborators that were technical assistant providers, associations, and other organizations. So it's probably the most vetted toolkit that I've ever worked on. It is fantastic. And I would like to take the opportunity today to not just explain the sections of the toolkit, although I will probably do a little bit of that, but how it relates to YCC. Because we tend to look at career pathways from our own perspective. You've been working with career pathways and thinking of it from where you sit in life, from your job description. So if you're a counselor, you're thinking of it from the counselor's perspective. If you're at the secondary level, which most of you are, you're looking at it from the high school perspective. This toolkit looks at the complete system, and it was really developed to look at it from the state level, but you're going to see so much in it will apply to you locally and to the YCC grant in particular. Element number 1 talks about partnerships and clarifying roles. The first thing that I need to tell you is that Career Pathways is a team sport. It's not an individual sport, it's a team sport, and you've been part of a team whether you realize it or not. You've been part of the team that's within your institution, but you also are part of a larger team, a part of the system. There's been a cross-agency leadership team at your state, regardless of what state you're in. At the state level, they are collaborating and supporting career pathways. And each of the roles and the responsibilities of each of the partners has been clarified, and they have been working to get support, high-level support from political leaders. This is also happening at the regional or local level. In the WIOA legislation, core partners and a unified plan development, those two things are required. It's delineated in the Act and must, at the minimum, have the core partners, which is the blue boxes on your screen. And then, in addition, most of them are adding also the red partners. So that's happening at the state level. It's also happening at the local level. Under YCC, you were required to have a connection with your workforce development, but as the grant has been going along, I hope that you're still continuing to make those connections. If you're not involved with the partnership or you're not aware of it, you've got to get your YCC grant program connected to it, because this will help you, especially for funding and sustaining your YCC program. So that's what's happening at the state and local level. And let me see if I can get this to turn to the next slide. Yes, it works. Great. So you need to clarify the roles and responsibilities of the collaborating partners for your grant. So on the screen are some typical cross-agency roles. And what you're really looking for is, what are the agency strengths, what are the contributions? And this is very important for sustainability. What can someone contribute that perhaps your grant has been doing all along? So this chart is just typical. It's not inclusive by any means, and it's not prescriptive by any means. But you may want to, as a YCC partnership, you may wish to complete the matrix for your own partnership. In the toolkit, I've pulled on the screen worksheet 1.3a, and that is a matrix for the partner's roles and responsibilities. So you can have a clear understanding of the roles for each partnership, and you may you have an MOU that spells that out. There are other tools also. On this tool, you will define the roles and responsibilities for each partner. You can type or write an X for the appropriate column, and then there's places to further define the action that's needed, and there's more sheets to add for more partners. I also wanted to pull out from element 1, which is partnerships, other tools that are in that section that may be applicable to your YCC work. 1.1a is a partner contact information. Many of you may be aware or not aware of all the partners that are happening at the state level and at the local level, but even if you are aware, you may not be in contact with them. As we want to sustain the work that we've been doing in YCC, you need to connect with these folks. So 1.1a might be a good worksheet for you. Another worksheet is 1b. Those are representatives for specific federal programs that might be in your area. 1.1c is an asset mapping test. It really maps the service provided. There's a graphic on page 37 of element 1, and this basically is taking you through the process of how to find out who's doing what in your area that might be able to pick up some of the things that you've been doing in YCC. As you look at sustaining YCC, and we'll talk about this later when we get to the funding element, you may have to piecemeal or braid funding. Some of you are looking for funding to continue the work that you're doing. Some of you are kind of incorporating it into your own institution's work. Most of you will probably be piecemealing it out. So this would help you, 1.1c. Are there any questions on element 1 before I move to element 2? There's going to be the opportunity at the end of the webinar for you to ask questions about any of the elements. But if you have a burning question right now, I'll take it. You can type it in, and we'll try to answer your questions as we're working through the different elements. So the next section in your toolkit is element 2, which is all about employers. It's identify industry sectors and engage employers. And you've already done this with YCC, identified industries in the H-1B area. But as you sustain the work you're doing and expand it because you are a pilot for Career Pathways. Many of you are like, I'm not familiar with Career Pathways. Well, I have news for you. You're really doing Career Pathways in YCC. You've been a pilot, and you're actually kind of the trailblazers in Career Pathways, whether you've realized it or not. So we not only want to sustain the work that you've been doing in the targeted industries that were required in the H-1B industry area for this particular grant, we want to expand into others. And so it's very important to bring those industry partners together. This particular graphic is out of the toolkit, and it just talks about the different things that your partners may be, the roles that they might play. Most of you are very familiar with the work-based learning because that was a requirement in our YCC grant. But there's multiple roles, and there's different levels of engagement. So each of your grants may have a different level of engagement within an industry or with specific employers. There are multiple roles for those employers, and they may contribute in different ways to your YCC program and as you expand it into other areas. The greater role of the employer, the more ownership they're going to have, and the more likely we're going to meet their industry needs. There is a very good worksheet, 2.3a, which is called Inventory of Partners' Employment Engagement. And it may be very helpful for you to kind of look at, well, who's doing what? Because you have all these employers, but they're not all engaged at the same level, nor do they really all have to be. But we have to have some real champions, some real strategic partnerships at level 4 and 5. This particular inventory breaks the employer engagement level into 5 levels. Level 1 is just, it's a new relationship. They're advising you. You're just basically making the initial contact. It's a new relationship. Level 2 and 3 are working relationship. They may be helping you build or co-design some of the programs. You're establishing trust with them, credibility. This is what I would call a working relationship. Level 4 and 5 are getting into strategic partnerships. Level 4 is what we call convening. It's a trusted provider. They collaborate. Level 5, though, is they are leading the program areas. They are leading, they're providing leadership for your YCC program, and as you expand into other areas when you sustain this. So it's really a full strategic partner. So you might want to complete the worksheet for the industry sector that you're working in and find out which, what level of relationship. This is really helpful for as you look at sustainability and to expand. There are other worksheets in this toolkit in Element 2 that I thought would really be helpful for YCC participants. The first one is 2.1b. It looks at data or more of a resource list and links for identifying additional targeted industries. So if I were in your shoes doing YCC, I would make a case not only to sustain what I'm doing in my YCC grant, but that it works so good, it works so well, and we're doing such good things, we now want to expand it into other program areas. So I would look at 2.1b. These are resource lists for you to help look at where you want to expand. And you make the case that you're using YCC to springboard, that we don't want to lose all the work that we've done in YCC. We not only want to sustain those industries that we identified in the H-1B YCC grant, but we want to use that as a springboard to go into other industries. And those will be helpful resources for you. Another area that I think, or another tool worksheet in the toolkit that I think might be helpful for you is 2.5A, and it really looks at employers, industries' needs. So as you're looking at expanding, your YCC has been doing very good. You're looking at sustaining and expanding it. This basically asks some questions to industry like, you know, what is do you have enough well-trained, adequate supply of entry-level workers for the next 18 months? Same question for the next 3 years. Do you have enough technical skilled workers for the next 18 months, the next 3 years? And same question again for supervisory, so you can get a feel for where is the need. Again, if there's any questions, we have the opportunity at the end of this webinar, but I will pause for a second to see if there's anyone that has a question on employer engagement. Okay, feel free to put it in chat or question and answers at any time. Let's move on to element 3, which is the meat and potatoes of a Career Pathways program. This is really the kind of the programmatic area where you're designing the training programs. This element 3 kind of assumes that the partnerships have the players at the table that are needed, employers are engaged. You've already targeted specific industries, which you have in YCC, and you've been designing the training programs, which you have in YCC, but I want to make sure that we've really drilled down to the competencies that employers need. We really need to understand the industry ladder that comes from employers, what the skills are needed, and we need to make sure that we are developing an education and training ladder that corresponds with that industry or occupational ladder. This graphic is from the actual toolkit. It's really looking at the system of Career Pathways and that there's multiple entries. If you've been working at the high school level, and let's say that you've been working with sophomores, well, your program is going freshmen through seniors, let's say, 9th graders through 12th grade. Well, where do your 9th graders come from? Well, most all of them come from 8th grade, right? But if you're at community college and we're looking at the bigger system of Career Pathways, there's multiple entrances for folks. Community colleges, for example, have all types of entries into their Career Pathway system, from recent high school graduates, from high school completers but no college, from they went to college but they didn't complete it, they don't have a credential, from adult basic ed, folks working on their GED, folks that English is a second language, to trainers that need training to go into a different industry. So I'm showing you this because I want you to understand that the system has been bigger than just the perspective that you've been working in YCC. So you are part of a bigger system. There's adults and there's even youth and non-traditional learners that are often struggling to complete, programs. So we need to make sure that if they lack the basic skills, we need to make sure that we're including work readiness skills and English language comprehension. There's other barriers such as transportation, the need for child care. One of the things that I hear a lot from the community college partners is that, tuition, books, and fees aren't the big problem. It's that it's the other outside crises, outside of the education realm, that really are barriers for students. Things like, the baby needs milk grandma needs to go to the hospital, or to the doctor. My car is broken down. And so it's going to take more players than just education and training providers. So we want to make sure that as we look at all these multiple entries, that we have the support systems for that and that we have entries for them. It's hard to jump from just a GED into perhaps a engineering program or even a health science program. These folks may need a bridge program. And you also, as you're working with your youth participants, you've had folks that need maybe some help getting into the actual classes that they need. So we need, in our Career Pathways system, we need to provide participants with multiple entries and multiple exits to accommodate academic readiness, and we need to have on-ramping and off-ramping when necessary. We need to designing programs requires organizing competencies into logical sequence of information. And so we have basically 3 steps in a Career Pathways program. We really need to know what are the on-the-job skills from our employers, when we call the knowledge and skills the competencies. Then we need to organize those competencies and teach them differently than what we have, using different teaching methodologies to create the content or the curriculum for the program. So that's the course. Then as we create the courses, as we put them together in a sequence, that's when it becomes a Career Pathways program. In YCC, you've done much of this, but the Toolkit really spells out the steps and gives you additional tools to review the curriculum that you've done in the Career Pathways program. All right, the big pyramid. This is an occupational competency model, and you can get these models at the Competency Model Clearinghouse. This was developed by the Department of Labor. It provides tools and resources for building competencies models. You may be building these from scratch. You may be modifying existing models, and this will also help you as you build these. This will also help you build the occupational or the career ladder. So you can get that at on the web from careeronestop.org. It's in the toolkit, the link is. But basically, if you look at the model there, the bottom, I'll go by colors, and I hope our colors are similar. Sometimes they're not when you're using technology, but the bottom is red or a burnt rust. It's the personal effectiveness competencies. Everyone must have those. They must have their interpersonal skills, and you've been dealing with that in your YCC program. The next 2 levels are academic competencies, they're in purple, and the workplace competencies. And then in the yellow are industry-wide technical competencies and industry sectors. So you go from broad to very narrow, and then you get into occupational specific requirements and even management competencies. At the high school level, you're dealing with the red, the purple, probably some of the yellow or gold, probably not in the blue at all. The yellow is usually shared by secondary and post-secondary. It really depends on the pathway and the credential that you're working on. But basically, there are 6 steps in building a competency model. You pull down the existing competency model in the database that I gave you from the clearinghouse, educators kind of review that with the employer, and then the employer kind of identifies and say these are critical work functions or tasks for a specific job, and then you gather some subject matter experts that are currently performing the job, and they also identify critical and frequently performed tasks, and they also identify the knowledge and skills and abilities, and then you validate you with the employer. It is something that has to be done hand in hand with the employer. A career ladder. This is what they call the career ladder or career lattice roadmap. This is at the heart of effective pathway programs, which individuals can ascend from entry-level jobs to higher-level jobs within an occupational program. Many of these will come out of the previous steps in developing the competencies models. And at that competency model clearinghouse, there are lots of materials in developing career ladders and lattices and examples. You really need these to visualize so that a student or an adult learner or a parent or even educators and training providers can visualize what does it take to go up in a specific occupation. This one is from Portland Community College in accounting and bookkeeping. And so we're really looking at what are the ladder, the steps on the ladder for that particular occupation. Those will be the exit points that we need to make sure that we have built in our education and training ladder. So from industry, we get basically the career ladder or career lattice. Some of them are complicated. And then our job in education and training is to make sure that we have an education and training ladder that has the same exit points. And people will come in and out as these entry and exit points as life circumstances dictate. So element 3 is really the meat. There's a lot more in element 3. I do want to pull out just a few that I thought might be helpful for YCC. There is, on page 10, there's a recruitment, in element 3 on page 10, there's a recruitment resource list. I thought that might be helpful because I know that many of the sites are still having trouble populating their participant table. There's also a really good link on page 29. It's for the certificate finder, so you can understand really what are the credentials. In addition to that, I would really encourage you on page 31, there's a link for registered apprenticeship programs. I truly believe we're going to see more and more emphasis on apprenticeships, and that's not just my bias. In a previous life, I was a youth apprenticeship coordinator. We probably call that a pre-apprenticeship now. But I really think, you might want to look at your YCC programs and see where maybe that could even be connected to or as you expand or sustain the program. Also, there's a pretty good link on page 43 for individual career plans or what we call the ICP or the IDP, Individual Development Plan. So again, you will have the opportunity for questions at the end, but if you have any questions on designing programs, feel free to pull that out now and send it to us. Let's move on to element 4. And this one you're really interested in because it's about identifying funding needs and sources. The cross-agency leadership team at the local level, you really should be bringing it to them so they can help identify funding sources to support the work that you've been doing under YCC, because they're familiar with non-traditional funding streams that may be incorporated into your program. They'll be familiar with ways that we can braid other funding sources. So it's basically kind of looking at whose funds can support what you've been doing. Because each of the partner agencies, they know what's allowable, what's an allowable activity for their funder and their sources of funding. So you can braid this funding across agencies and to help sustain the work that you've been doing. This is a worksheet called the Funding Options Worksheet, and it's really would help you identify some core WIOA programs or some other required one-stop partners, or even other programs that have funding sources and have a career pathways focus, what they can do to help. So it's really whose funding can support some of the work that you've been doing. So maybe you could piecemeal this out or braid. And again, we don't want to just sustain what we've been doing in YCC. We want to expand beyond those H-1Bs. So use it as a springboard to make the case that you not only want to fund what you've been doing, you want to expand it into other program areas. That takes us to element 5, which is align policies and programs. Now, much of the alignment of policies really happens at the state level with the state leadership team, but you can do pretty much too at the regional or local level, especially in the area of aligning local secondary programs with post-secondary. So we need to look at those secondary/post-secondary policies. Programs should really be built 9 through 14 or 9 through 16. Ideally, we're trying to build a program that lays over several institutions. So if I'm building an engineering program, we might want to build an exit point where they can get out as an engineering tech with 2 years at the community college, or they can go 4 years to a university and exit out as an engineer. So we're looking at a 9 through 14 plus a 9 through 16, and we really want to build that program and lay it over those 3 institutions. To do that, we really need to concentrate on some educational credit attainment so that it's beneficial. So on worksheet 5.1B as an education credit attainment worksheet, it looks at dual credit, it looks at articulation, it looks for credit, it looks at credit for work-based learning, which I think is something that we all need to consider. There are other worksheets in element 5 that I thought would be helpful for YCC. One particular one is 5.1I, which looks at professional development. So many times we think of professional development as a workshop. Well, professional development may have workshops in it, and it may have a workshop in it, but that should be part of a bigger plan. So it's really what I'm trying to say with professional development. It's a process. It's not just an event. It's a process. There are events in the process, but it's a process. So that particular worksheet may be helpful to you. Component 6 looks at measures system change and performance. And measuring the impact of the comprehensive system changes is critical to sustaining the support for carrying out the career pathways or your YCC. Now, all of you I know are probably rolling your eyes by now because you've had a big learning curve on all the measurements that we've had to collect, all the data, but funding is tied to good data. So we want to make sure that we have good data. And really, you've been the trailblazer on this data crunching because the handwriting is on the wall. All the data that you've been collecting, and I know for some of you it's been, you know, a hardship that it's been a learning curve, so to speak, but that is the data that eventually I really truly believe most of it will be collecting for all programs. So you've been kind of the trailblazer, and it'll get easier because we'll get better data collecting systems. Our systems will talk to each other, and there's two initiatives that are happening at the federal level that are really encouraging the development of higher quality data and analysis. The Department of Ed has launched a statewide longitudinal data system initiative, and the Department of Labor launched a complementary workforce data quality initiative. And really, all you really need to know is that the emphasis is on a P through 20 data system to capture, analyze, and use student data from preschool to high school. So the work that you've been doing and the learning curve and all those battle scars that you have for measuring system change and the evaluations that you've been going through has really been the trailblazer. We're learning from that. The Department of Ed's learning, the Department of Labor, and together they're trying to build a P through 20 data system. So you need to pat yourself on the back because all the scars have been worth it because this is where we're going in the future. So you've really been the pilot for that. For those of you that are saying, well, funding is tied to good data, and my data, I have data, but it doesn't show me in a good light. When we look at data, we really need to not just look at the numbers, but we need to ask ourselves why. Why is that number the way that it is? If it's low, why is it low? For example, maybe it's the combination of the content, but also the support services in your program that's made a difference. So maybe looking at, well, the content was good, the programmatic area was good in the program, but we didn't have the supportive services. So it's a learning curve, and that's what the data can show. There are some other good charts and worksheets in this particular section, element 6. 6.2a really shows you who measures what and when they measure it, and that might be helpful as we move forward. Also, the Alliance for Quality Career Pathways, which was CLASP, and I was on the leadership team for that, page 35, if I'm reading my writing correctly. There are metrics to measuring career pathways, and that would be helpful. The third thing I wanted to point out was the return on investment calculator on page 49. I can tell you I've been doing career pathways for 20 years before it was even called career pathways. Been doing parts of it. I mean, we've all been building up to career pathways. And a return on investment to show employers their involvement and also to show funders the return on investment for career pathways. So that's it for element 6. So the workbook is basically divided up into an introduction, and then each chapter focuses on one of the elements, 1 through 6. And the last chapter is additional resources. And there's a variety. in addition, each chapter kind of has some more references and links and to go to. There's a variety of career pathways related resources in this section. They were identified by the developers, such as myself, federal staff, state folks, local partners that that had input. And so basically there are 7 areas of additional resources. Number 1, there is a section called Career Pathways Catalogs and Clearinghouses, and it will give you all the links to those. There are, the second section is reports and publications. The third one is websites and initiatives. Number 4, and that's at the federal level. And number 4 is state and local program profiles, resources, and tools. Section 5 is webinars and training videos. And number 6 is a Career Pathways glossary. And that's maybe very helpful as you're trying to work with your partners and you're trying to find common language. And then 7 is the bib, which will give you additional reading. So this thing is just chock full of resources. I mean, you've got this this chapter that is called Additional Resources, but in each of the element chapters, there are resources and links. So it's all there. It's pretty comprehensive. Okay, any questions?
And just a reminder, this is Angela. If you do have questions, feel free to type those in the chat box or the Q&A box. You can find those on the right-hand side of your screen, or up at the top you can see the little icons. And to type those in, I know it was a lot of information that we've covered, and all of you are at different levels of your career pathways experience and knowledge. So it might be, needing some time to digest the information that we've just learned and take some time to walk through some of the tools that are in the new toolkit. So we do ask that you, take some time, think about it. If you don't have questions right now, if you have questions later, you know how to reach us. You can always send an email to the YCC mailbox and we will get back to you. And also while you're thinking about that, if any questions are coming up, just a few reminders before we end the webinar today. At the end of the webinar, you will have a survey that's going to open up, or an evaluation in another screen. We do ask that you just take a couple minutes to fill that out. Your feedback helps us to shape the technical assistance that we do provide for all of you. So please do answer those questions. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you want to learn about, if there's other topics or ideas. And also, just as another reminder, in about 3 months from now, and 3 months after each webinar or event that we do, we send out a follow-up evaluation, and that's just kind of to find out, did you use the information that we've shared? Are you applying it in your program? And we want to know about that. So when you do get that email in a couple of months from now, please do take a couple of minutes at that time as well to fill that out. So any questions? I don't see any questions coming in. So we will wrap up. We're a couple minutes after 4 o'clock here. So thank you very much, Sarah and Debbie, for taking time to share with us today. And any closing comments from you, Sarah or Debbie?
No, I just want to thank everybody for all the really good work that you're doing with the young adults across the country, and thanks for listening in today.
And this is Debbie, and I know it was a lot of information. We probably could have done a webinar on each of the elements separately, but if you have any questions, feel free to email me. I think most of you know how to get a hold of me, so thank you.